During the Haitian Revolution, a guy by the name of Jean-Jacques Dessalines fought not just for freedom, but for cultural survival. You see, Jean-Jacques knew that true liberation meant more than breaking chains. It meant holding on to identity in a world that was determined to erase it. While other generals at the time gave speeches and map strategy, Dessalines held the line. He was rugged, relentless, unbothered by the spotlight. And I think without him, it might have all fallen apart. Brenton Vidal was our Dessalines, a quiet force with no need for fame. Behind the scenes, he was the backbone. Musically, spiritually, structurally, a workhorse with the soul of a wizard. He didn't just play keys, he translated energy. Whenever we would get on that stage, Brenton would literally go into a trance. Like he'd be locked in, lost in the frequencies. And Brenty wasn't just in the band, he was building it. Spearheading gigs, programming sets, and grounding the song in Bouyon roots, no matter how far we push the fusion. He reminded us that professionalism and passion weren't opposites, they're actually twins. Because you can be disciplined and dangerous. This episode is about that rare kind of player, the kind who makes everyone better just by showing up. This is episode 4 in the Key of Life, featuring the force that made the chaos feel like jazz, Brenton Vidal. Welcome to Esclav Unmastered.
Let's go.
People talk about finding your role like it's settling, but Brenty didn't settle into a role, he shaped one. From cousin connections to sonic direction, this is how it all began.
Yeah, well, my first link up with Esclav was actually through Puski and Falco. Falco actually is my blood cousin. He's from St. Joseph. I'm from Salisbury. And Falco went to ITSS. I went to St. Mary's Academy. I'm a little older than Falco. Me and Puski is about the same age. For Falco was always a talented person growing up in ITSS. He used to break dance. Falco was always a talented individual. Always a talented individual. But he was connected with St. Joseph through his umbilical cord, or if you can say that like that. Falco was like a street dude also, but talented. So I met up with Puski and Falco, and Esclav was already on their way already. They had a couple songs on the radio, and they said that they were putting together a band. So if I could get a couple musicians for them, blah, blah, blah. They said that Ulson will be off and on, Ulson Matthew, myself, Craig as the drummer from time to time, and then Puski could also drum. And then sometimes I used to bring my cousin Sean on bass. But the first link up was with Puski and Falco, and they said that they were going to do a band. I can't remember what year because it was so long ago, but it was in 2006, 2005, something like that. Esclav was a unique group of individuals. I would say that passion, commitment, and love of music. Everybody was on that same level. Basically, everybody loved the music, passionate about it, and talented, super talented. And we came from all walks of life. We had Coco Killer, he was a dancehall expert. We had Falco, he was a hip-hop, Bouyon, reggae, salsa, R&B, techno. Falco was like what Melchour used to call him, the avatar. He had all the elements.
When the world needed him most, he vanished.
My role was basically, just ensure that the elements of Bouyon, we stuck to that. But we experimented with a lot of different things, and we took risk in the productions also. It was intriguing to me and everybody else, Actually, I was telling Melchour the other day, we had fans that were Christians. They were not part of the revelry. They did not take part in carnival. They did not take part in parties and things. But the music that Esclav was producing, they were drawn towards it because the production, the beat making, the musical arrangement was so unique. You couldn't help it. My process of building tracks was solely on Puski and Falco. Basically, I was just adding the keyboard accompaniment. But then I had to reprogram most of the stuff into the Akai, and at the time we had the Akai 1000. I just had to like reprogram the stuff into the drum machine, and then when I taught Falco how to use the Akai, he was the one that took over from that. So basically, I used to just come and play. One of the most outstanding tracks that like stood out for me was Guineas. I was part of like the production of that one, and that track especially, we played it live before we did the actual production and recording of that track. So all the parts you hear in that was live, freestyle, before the production. So that was a special track. Also, the track with Benji, One Nation, that was done by Puski. I really love that track. And kudos to Benji for coming on board with us because we showed the unity in the Bouyon music, and that was his start.
Some shows define you, others will redefine you. For us, that was Curl in the Pack. But behind the scenes, strategy, sabotage, and Brenty, steady in the storm.
Curl in the Pack, the first Curl in the Pack show, we practiced rehearsed for Curl in the Pack, and the keyboard players were myself, Brenton, Ulson Matthew, Craig on drums. Yeah, that's it. And then Puski, Falco, Median, Coco Killer, the whole works, Esclav. But then towards the day of performance, we got some sad news that Ulson could not take part. But at the time, we had like a pool of musicians. I was always around a lot of musicians, Serenade, Rough and Ready, WCK. So we invited Ali, Lawrence, Fingers. So the first Curl in the Pack performance, it was myself on the keyboards and controlling the Akai drum machine, and Ali, Lawrence on keyboards. That was, and a lot of people don't know that. When I mentioned that to Melchour, he was surprised. But that was the first Curl in the Pack, and that performance, it transcended Esclav out of the little band conversation, so to speak, because that performance was epic. It had a little controversy with that performance. Normally, when I set up my equipment, a lot of people don't know that I have backup. So if anything goes wrong on stage, I always have a backup. So when we set up on stage during soundcheck, I left my stuff on the stage and I went to use the bathroom, I guess. And one of the other little band musicians, they stole my card for my drum machine, but I had the other two in my pocket. So when I came, I saw that the drum machine was empty. So I said, well, shit, somebody did something there. Anyway, I took out the backup in my pocket, put it in, and the band performed. After the performance, the alleged individual brought back the card for me because I guess he thought that something would happen, we wouldn't be able to perform. But I always have a backup, and that's just experience. I've been playing music since like 14 years. Experience has taught me that you always have to have a backup.
If you can thrive on the road, you can thrive anywhere. Matnik was our first real leap, and Brenty was right at the center of that evolution.
Normally, or during Carnival, on the last Friday, the last weekend of Carnival celebrations, I perform with Rough and Ready. And normally we do a Matnik tour. At the time, Bob, which was the leader of Rough and Ready, he made it to the finals as a Calypsonian in Dominica Calypso Association finals. So he could not come. So that opportunity presented itself to Esclav. So the performers we had was Falco, Tasha P, Sean on bass, myself on keyboard, Joel Francis on guitar, and Skip on drums. We just did it as Esclav because that's mainly the core that was performing for most of the time. And that was a great tour that, everybody enjoyed themselves. Opened a lot of doors to a lot more performances, especially for Tasha. Tasha P, she was hired by Swinging Stars after that tour, and then she has never looked back. She's still in Swinging Stars. So Esclav was a band that a lot of people looked up to because we were super talented and we had work ethic, basically. Looking back, I would have done anything differently because I don't want the TVA to pick me up because I would have messed up the timeline. And everybody right now is thriving musically. We have Melchour in Florida. I'm also in Florida. Tasha P is in Swinging Stars. Sean is in Dominica and Florida sometimes. Falco is a big producer in France. Median is in San Diego. Puski is in New Jersey. And we have all matured. And one day I see maybe a career festival in the spotlight for us because we contributed a lot to Bouyon music and to the new wave of the new Bouyon music that is actually playing right now. It was actually Falco and Puski that was one of the main architects of that song, you know what I'm saying? Together with Triple K. And also Cross Vibes. We don't have to forget about Cross Vibes. Cross Vibes was also a band. They was like our rival during that time, you know, so but yeah. Falco, Puski, Dada Lawrence, Ulson Matthew, Cross Vibes. They ship the new sound of Bouyon today.
Sometimes the best moments aren't planned. The Beanie Man set wasn't on schedule, but when energy meets readiness, magic happens.
Along the same lines of being versatile, talented, having work ethic and everything along those lines, the band also had to like finance itself, basically. So we decided to do a lot of hotel gigs, and with the addition of Tasha P, myself, Melchour, Ernil Paul on drums, we were the main band for Fort Young for a certain season. Fort Young Hotel. We had a lot of epic moments at Fort Young Hotel. We did a lot of shows over there. The band was very talented and versatile. So coming down to it now, it was a Queer Festival weekend, and we were performing as usual. But then, you know, that performance was leading up to an epic moment in the history of the band and the history of all the musicians present. We knew that Beanie Man was at the hotel. So we decided that we were going to do a different repertoire, basically, you know, and a lot more dancehall, reggae, just to show the versatility of the band. And when Beanie Man heard that, like how we were playing, he decided he couldn't take it anymore. He came on the mic. And that was such an epic moment. He's still on the mic for maybe like 20 minutes. He did a number of songs, different mashups, and just freestyle, did what he had to do. The crowd was very impressed with the band and opened up a lot more doors for the band at that time, you know. We also used to take part in the carnival celebrations also too. So those moments open up a lot of opportunities for the band. So Beanie Man, I don't know if you remember us, but yeah. That was us in the Fort Young Hotel. We were the band that backed you up. We also had a pool of musicians. We had different musicians that night. On bass, we had Victor of Midnight Groovers fame, Ernil Paul on drums, myself on keyboard, Melchour on keyboard, Median, Tasha, and Falco at the front, and Puski, manager and engineer.
And every band has those what now moments. For Brenty, it was a brutal car crash. But even with scars, he kept showing up because the music wouldn't let go.
And in doing all these events and performances and all over the island, Dominica, I was also a customs officer. So sometimes they would like put me in places like Marigot or Ansdimi, Portsmouth. This particular time, for this particular incident, I was in Ansdimi, and it's one of the most northernly villages in Dominica. But I was still performing with the band heavily. We were performing everywhere. And at that night in particular, I think we just did Fort Young, and we had another gig to do I think later in the night. So we did that, but I had to drive back to Ansdimi, which is like an hour plus drive. When I got to like Taru, you know, I dozed off a little bit and I had an accident. It was a terrible accident. The car was totaled. I ended up in the ocean. First person that was on my phone to call was Puski, and and he organized everything for me. Ambulance, everything. So Puski was like my lifesaver because that was the person I was mostly attached to at that time, the band. We just did like 2 events, and I said I was going to drive up to go to work. I think he suggested that I sleep in the studio, but I said, nah, I'll make it. And then I ended up in an accident, My hand got messed up a little bit. I still have the scars to show. I thought that I couldn't play keyboard anymore, but God is good, man. We made it. Still showed up to a couple shows. Melchour took over from playing from that time. I really didn't want to like come back into the band, kind of, because I was feeling a kind of a way, but that's just life. You know what I'm saying? But for the love of music, I had to keep showing up. I had to try my best, and I ended up playing, can continue playing. I still play today. All that was part of the Esclav era,
Even when I stepped in as musical director, Brenty was still right there. Injured hand and all. Still programming, still guiding, still making sure the sound never lost its soul. It's easy to remember the parties, the fans, the chaos. But what moved Esclav was purpose and people like Brenton who played the long game. Here's how we carried that forward.
Esclav was youthful energy. You know what I'm saying? When we did our shows, it was we had fans. We have we had fans, you know, and these girls used to follow us everywhere. Big Bottom Crew, BET Girls, yo, and it's youthful energy. And it like I said, Esclav was the blueprint for the sound of Bouyon you're hearing today. Esclav was the blueprint. So it was a new energy, new hype energy. Up. Everything was up all the time. We did couple shows in Soufriere and Scott Z, and trust me, it was just easy mashup. We in Dominica, and that's how it is. But you know, it's just the love of music and just being passionate about what you do and what you put out to the public. And that's what keeps us going, basically. You know, it's like we had a responsibility to keep making good music, pushing the barriers, being creative, trying something new. We just had to keep on going. There's no right and wrong way about going away about making music. And I learned that from Esclav. There's no right or wrong way. It's just the end result. That is the main thing. You know, once everybody can come to one common ground in the studio, there's no right or wrong way. It's the end result. And once the end result is perfect, that's it. You have to be yourself. You can't be somebody else. Find your own sound, you know? Be yourself, be true to yourself, and be creative. Someone did tush pash. Nah, don't do that. Don't use the same pattern. Do something else. Be yourself and be creative. That's what I would say. All right. This is Brenty. Boom.
Some people are the heart, others are the engine. But Brenty was both. Even when injured, even when tired, he never stepped back. He just found new ways to contribute, quietly, consistently, with a level of care most folks never even saw. It was never about the spotlight for him, just the work, the craft, the love. And that's what stays with me. Because long after the shows ended and the crowd went home, Brenty was still working, still pushing, still pouring into the sound. That's legacy. Not in headlines, but in habits. This was episode 4. Until next time, keep it loud, keep it real, and keep it rooted.